Hey guys, Happy New Year. Today on the 1st, I left super early, like 6 a.m. to come to Vegas. I'm having a meetup here at 1:30 at the Wynn with some of you guys, which I'm super excited about to have lunch. And then going to play a poker session. We're doing 1-3 no limit for a meetup game at the Wynn, which I'm super excited about. I played many years of poker at the Wynn in Macau, so coming back here always feels like home. They have an incredible way of creating this seamless experience where you always know you're at the Wynn, right down to the playlist. Some of my favorite songs and memories from Macau are recreated through the playlist at the Wynn. So I'm super excited. Of course, it would only be appropriate actually to start this off with goals for the year. And I think this year I'm actually doing something different. I usually set like very clear goals and I update them throughout the year, not always waiting for January 1st. But this year I'm just really trying to live in flow and intuitively and just focus on what's the most important thing to do right now. What do I want to be doing? How do I want to be spending my time? And just channel as much of my energy towards that activity as possible. And of course, family, friends are always the most important, kind of taking those things for granted, just setting a goal to begin with. And as long as those things are okay, life is good. I feel super blessed. I'm very excited for 2023. I feel like a lot of things are going to converge to compound to make it one of the best years of my life. I actually feel like it's going to be the best year of my life. So bold claims, big statement. Hopefully we start off with a win in this poker game, but I'm just here for fun. And if I lose, that's great. And I'm really excited to have lunch with some of you guys. So let's go, starting now. What's up? It's our meetup. Brought everyone a book. Check it out, Poker Coach. All right, here's my client. Big takeaway you learned.
I just needed the basics to be back on track. And I did learn a couple good strategies for betting pre-flop.
This is Terry. Here's his graph. This is when he started taking Alec's Academy right there. Check that out. Woo! Good job. All right, we're done with lunch.
Yes.
We're going to the Wynn now, or we're going to the poker room, and we're gonna play some 1-3 no limit. I'm really excited. One of the guy's bucket list items is to beat me in a pot, so I'm not gonna bluff him. That's my strategy. And I'm gonna play some poker. Let's go. All right, guys, before we get to the hands, special announcement. I will be on the Hustler live stream on the 11th of January. We're starting at 5 p.m. I'm playing one of the big games. Come check out the hands. I'm gonna put on my best show, and thank you so much in advance for your support. You guys are awesome. So I'll see you on the Hustler. All right, guys, I'm bringing you the hand of the day from the beautiful Lake Las Vegas. All right, so the first hand of my meetup game that I get dealt, I have ace queen in the small blind. It folds to me. I make it 15. The big blind calls. We go heads up to the flop, which comes down ace, king, 10, 2 spades. I bet out 20. He calls. The turn comes another ace, not a spade. Great spot for me. And I decide to bet 50 here. My kicker plays. I want to bet big. I don't want to give him a cheap price on a draw. And if he has an ace, he's obviously going to call. There's really no reason for me to size down here and let him in for a cheap price. He makes the call. We go heads up to the river, which is another 10. Now, this is a card where it's pretty hard for me to get value. Number one, I don't think that he's going to call that often with a king or queen jack, especially if I bet super big. So I wanted to bet small here and either let him call with a 10 if he has something like jack 10 or queen 10, or potentially get frisky and go for a raise, thinking that I'm underrepresenting my hand. I decided to make the same bet size 50, which psychologically I feel looks pretty weak when you bet the same amount on the turn as you do on the river, and then he fires it all in for a raise of 200.
All in.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Of course, I make the call expecting the shot to chop, but I get the surprising good news when he turns over 10-9 of hearts and I scoop myself a nice pot.
Oh my God.
Okay, we did it.
I guess I really did it.
Second hand kicks off. I have king jack offsuit. I make it $10 in late position. The button calls and the big blind calls, and we go 3 ways to the flop. The flop comes down ace, queen, 3, rainbow. The big blind checks. And here, what I'm thinking is this flop is very good for me as the pre-flop raiser because I have a lot of hands that connect with this board, whereas the button and the big blind typically don't have aces, queens, or ace-queen, otherwise they would have 3-bet pre-flop. With what I call a range advantage, meaning my hands are stronger than the sum of the other two players' hands, I go ahead and make a c-bet. I choose a large size here because I want to apply a lot of pressure and make it $25. The button folds, the big blind calls, and at this point, I'm not that worried. Sure, the big blind has me beat. They probably have a queen or a weak ace, but I have plans for later streets. The turn comes with Jack. She checks again, and at this point, I feel like the default play is to check back. People hit a pair and they think to themselves, well, I have a pair, I have a gut shot, let me just see the river and see what happens. This is the wrong approach. You pretty much never have the best hand here, and you still have that same advantage that we had on the flop as you do on the turn. We have a lot more hands that are sets and 2 pairs than the big blind, and we should be applying a lot of pressure here. As for sizing, I chose to size up and bet $100 because it really puts all the hands that she can have in a very tough spot. If she has a weak ace, for example, like ace-5, facing a $100 bet here, given the situation, she's in bad shape. She's not going to want to call this bet out of position here, knowing that she could be facing a $300 or $400 all-in bet on the river. I size up, bet 100, it gets the job done, and I hope this illustrative bet sizing tactic really helped you in your game as well. All right, guys, I don't know if you can see this, but it's pouring rain, so we have intermission. I'm gonna take this intermission to tell you, head over to consciouspoker.com, download our hand reading system. It's totally free. It's the exact process I use to hand read in every hand I play. You'll also be added to our weekly newsletter. We send out awesome free content to help you take your game to the next level. I'll see you inside. After the 1-3 meetup game, I moved up to the 5-10-20 no limit to see if people respect my raises. This was the big game at the Wynn, so we had a cool mix of pros and VIPs in the game. I have a $40 straddle, and I'm in the cutoff with ace-9 offsuit. I make it $100, and folds around the big blind calls. We go heads up to the flop. Flop comes down ace, ace-5, rainbow, a great flop for me. He checks, and now I decide to make a very small bet of $60. The reason I chose a small size here is because I'm going to be betting this dry textured board, which favors the types of hands that I could have with a high frequency, meaning I'm going to be betting very, very often. The more that you bet in any given spot, typically the smaller you want to bet to give yourself a better risk-reward ratio. So I bet $60. This also allows him to call with a lot of hands, which I want him to do. Most of the hands he's going to have are either going to be either way ahead of me if he has a boat somehow magically, otherwise he's going to be way behind. If he has a worse ace or a pocket pair, he's drawing pretty slim, close to dead. So I want him to call here with a lot of hands, which he does, and we go heads up to the turn. The turn comes a jack of diamonds, bringing a flush draw. He checks, and at this point, of course I'm going to bet. The only question is how much. I opt for 260, a little bit bigger of a size, and I'm not betting as many hands on the turn as I am on the flop, so I can choose a bigger sizing. I also want to get a lot of value if he has an ace, because my kicker is pretty damn good, or maybe he turned a jack, or turned a flush draw, or turned a gut shot with something like king queen, king 10, queen 10, or backdoor diamonds. Now he goes for this weird sort of line and raises me to 920. Not really sure what to make of this because it's not a board that people bluff that often, but at the same time, there's not many value hands that he can actually have. So it's this weird spot where he doesn't have many bluffs, he doesn't have much value. At the same time, I have trip aces, definitely too strong to fold at this point, especially given that I have a decent kicker. I call and we go heads up to the river. River comes down an offsuit 10, so the flush draw misses. And I'm planning on actually folding to a big bet here just because I feel like this spot is under bluffed, meaning people do not bluff often enough. Even though I'm supposed to call with my hand facing a bet on the river, it's a spot where people just don't bluff that often, and therefore I think the correct exploitative adjustment is actually just a fold. But he gives me this weird sort of $1,100 bet, and at this point I'm like, okay, well, if he does have a weak ace, we chop, which is good. Of course, my kicker doesn't play anymore, but what hands am I really worried about that beat me? Yeah, he could have pocket fives, he could have ace 5, one combo of ace 5, or maybe he turned ace jack, or maybe he rivered ace 10. But I guess like the hand I'm the most worried about is something like ace queen that just kind of played it sort of funky pre-flop and goes for this weird value bet. I actually thought about raising here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in a comment below. Leave your thoughts. Should I turn my hand into a bluff here on the river, or is my hand just good enough to call? Anyway, leave your thoughts, let me know. I ended up just calling here because I felt like I beat his bluffs, of course, and I chop with a lot of aces. And he showed me the bad news. Actually had a weirdly played, interesting play ace-king offsuit. So he actually played ace-king funny pre-flop, but it paid off for him. Congrats, well done. He got me in this decent hand. All right, so last hand of this vlog. I didn't include all the hands because I wanted to keep this short and fast, so there were a lot of hands in between, but this hand was super interesting, and I did post it on my Instagram, so be sure to follow me there at Alec Torelli for updates in real time. Anyway, I raised the cutoff with pocket fours, and the button, who's a VIP, calls, and the small blind calls, and then the big blind, who's been very aggressive. He's been 3-betting a lot, cold 4-betting. I know he doesn't necessarily have a super strong hand, makes it 320. Over to me with fours. I really like calling here. We're about 6K deep, so 300 big blinds deep, and I have the VIP behind me who hopefully is gonna call, and I'm gonna flop a set, and I could win a lot of money. So that's kind of the idea. I call, the VIP calls, the other guy folds. We go 3 ways to the flop. The flop comes down 8-6-5 with 2 diamonds. I have fours with 4 of diamonds, and the big blind leads out 260. This is a very small bet, especially for this texture board, and I think he's gonna be c-betting here a decent amount, more than he probably should be because he's very loose and aggressive. Also with this small sizing, it's a really good spot for me to raise because he's betting with a lot of hands when he bets very small. That's kind of how the game theory works. But also because this board is much more advantageous to my types of hands than it is to his types of hands. So common theme in this video you're probably noticing is it's less about, like, pros are sort of thinking it's less about what type of hand you actually have in this moment and more about whose range of hands is stronger, meaning whose hand is stronger in this situation and what hands you can represent. So I want to also raise here because it puts a lot of pressure on him and it forces the other player behind me to fold, so I can just get the pot heads up in position, or maybe just have him fold and win the pot right away. On the flop I made it 800 and he called. Anyway, on the turn comes a 7 of clubs and he now leads out 900. So when he leads here, I actually put a poll out on my Instagram, and a lot of people were saying like, oh, he has a big pair. But you gotta think, guys, there's a 4-card straight on the board. If he has a big pair like queens, kings, or aces, he's not gonna lead this turn. He's just gonna check, maybe fold to a bet, or maybe check call. When he leads, he's telling me one of 2 things. He either has a 9 for a straight, or he has a bluff like a flush draw. So against that type of range, against that polar range of either the nuts or nothing, my hand plays very well as a call. I opt to call, the river comes in offsuit jack, and now he bets. I'm really just hoping he doesn't shove here, because when he shoves, it's basically a 9 or nothing, and probably a little bit leaning more towards a 9, but he gives me a rather easy decision and bets 1100. So when he bets this small on this river, it's like, again, I'm up against the same types of hands I'm up against on the turn. He either has a 9 or he's bluffing. There's absolutely no reason to raise, given that I'm getting such a good price. I feel like I have to call here. He's definitely capable of bluffing. He's not like a super nit player that always has a straight. So I call, he says king high, and I win myself a nice pot. So that's it for this session, and let's go wrap it up. I didn't have a great session. I think I ended up losing. So you'll see how much I lost, the numbers right up here, but I'm definitely gonna host more meetup games in LA, so just head over to consciouspoker.com, CONSCIOUS poker.com. I'm gonna be putting out a newsletter when I decide to host a game, and first come, first serve. I would love to have you guys come to meet up with me in LA, play some poker. I'm gonna be traveling in the coming months too, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel, more awesome content's coming. Leave your thoughts in a comment below too. So that's it for my session. I am going out now to the nightclub, my beautiful wife and our friend Carla. I'm really excited.